Guess that means it's my turn. Hi, everybody. I'm Tony Odell, or Tony O. Probably interacted with you on IRC. And today I'm going to be talking about ecosystems and a little bit about Fez. So I'm going to figure out my screen. Can everybody hear me? Or can anyone hear me? Sweet. Liz says yes. All right. So I'm lazier than other people. So my whole talk is done with BIM slides. We can skip this slide. I already introduced myself. And the Zoom bar is in the way. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about P6C, which was really the first sort of ecosystem that Raku had. That's been around since at least 2009, 2010, when I first got involved with Raku. It's just a list of repositories that contain Raku distributions. The next one is CPAN. We worked on that during a Perl Tool Chain Summit in Lyon a number of years ago. That one's kind of loosely authenticated and basically just a big file repository. And then Fez, which is fairly recent. That one's been thought about and kind of in the works since we started working on Zeph. If you go through the Zeph commit log, you'll actually see some code that I wrote in 2011, 2012 to try to make a Raku ecosystem start working. But I think within the last couple of years, it's been the right time. Fez was built specifically for Raku's distribution spec, and it's strongly authenticated. Right, so let's talk about P6C first. So P6C, as I said, is just a list of Git repositories. That makes it really easy to decentralize, to mirror the ecosystem, and to do a lot of stuff like that. It's not a lot of work for distribution or module authors to update their module. All they have to do is push their updates to master on Git, and all the behind the scenes stuff that makes P6C work takes care of what it needs to take care of. The cons of P6C are kind of numerous. The top three in my mind is it's very difficult to index. Currently, the way that it gets indexed and your modules actually make their way to the end users is there's a process that UGEXE runs that looks at the list of modules in the GitHub list, fetches all the metadata, and then puts that into basically a big JSON list that can later be consumed by Zeph. It does very little spot checking. You can put whatever you want in the metadata and it gets indexed, as long as, you know, the name and version and all that stuff actually exists, and sometimes not even then. There's no strictness. There's no way to actually verify that that if you want to download a module that I wrote, there's no way to verify that you're actually getting a module that I wrote. Anybody can upload a module with my name on it to Git. And then the other big one is it requires external tooling to get stuff out of Git. There's no over HTTP, just plain text way to get modules out of it. You either require some kind of SSL, you require Git, or some other type of tooling. All right, so that's P6C. CPAN, a lot of people are familiar with CPAN, especially if you come from the Perl world. It was designed for Perl. It's been around for a long time. It's very stable. It has a very simple architecture. It's very easy to mirror CPAN. It's very easy to create private CPANs. There's a tool, I think it's called MI6, module authoring tool, already integrated with CPAN, makes it really easy to upload. And that's a lot of what CPAN has going for it. like P6C, because it's so simple, it has no auth strictness checks. I could upload a module with Liz's name on it, and CPAN doesn't care. The indexers don't care. It'll make that module available for download, even though the auth doesn't match. Dealing with pause is kind of a hassle. That's a common complaint. And just like P6C, CPAN requires post-processing to actually index. It requires something to go through and create a list of the metadata that's actually available to Zeph that Zeph can consume and download the modules. It is a step above P6C in that in order to upload, you do actually have to have authenticated at some point. But again, you're not guaranteed to get the right module. All right. And then Fez. Fez is something that I wrote a couple of years ago. It's been kind of a long process because I have a main job that I do, and this is kind of a hobby. But Fez was designed and spec'd for Raku. I've been involved with the spec for Raku for a long time. I'm fairly familiar with it, although it has changed a number of times. The index is easily consumed by Zeph when you upload a distribution to Fez. That meta automatically gets put into an index that Zeph can just look at and use. It doesn't require Zeph to do any post-processing. It doesn't require a job for Zeph. And the index happens immediately. As soon as your distribution is stored somewhere that Zeph can download it, your module is in the Fez index file. Module publishing is pretty easy to do from the command line. That tool MI6, there's a PR for it to actually integrate with Fez. I'm not sure what the status of that is today, but if you're into authoring tools, check that out. It's a little more involved to mirror than just using rsync, which is what people mirror CPAN with. It's not really too much more involved than using rsync. The main index file for Fez contains where to get all the files from and what their names are. So it's, basically just writing a script. It's still relatively young. There's about 400 modules that are currently uploaded to it. There's, within the first 50 modules, there was a couple of bugs that were found. They were fixed very quickly. And it's been very stable since then. There's no real package browsing website or GUI that's specific to Fez. You can use Raku land, which indexes all of the Fez files and integrates with it. But there's nowhere like Node has npm.js where you can go look at all the modules that you've uploaded and have made available for people. That is a consideration, but kind of the future, I'm thinking more on making quality indexes for uploaded modules. All right, so that's Fez. I'll show you what the architecture running Fez looks like with my sweet graph here. So I'm going to be talking about this highlighted part. So the Fez CLI, that's where you type, into your command line, Fez upload. When you type Fez upload, it goes to S3, gets an upload link. You upload the distribution to S3, and that kicks off a Lambda, which actually indexes the file. So it looks at your gzip file, looks at the meta JSON file in the gzip file, figures out where it should store that, how it should index it, moves it to where it's going to be stored, and creates a task for the indexer. And the indexer runs as a separate process so that there's no race condition, and we can kind of guarantee that your distribution is going to be indexed. So it's a very simple back end, and it works really well, and it's really fast. So within a couple of minutes of you uploading your distribution, you'll get a notice that it couldn't be indexed for a reason, and that reason will be in the email, or your file or your module will show up in the index file, right? And then on the back end, Zeph can consume that index directly. It doesn't need to cache anything, and it can search and easily download the new modules. So Zeph CLI will go fetch the JSON, do a search in the JSON for it, and then go to S3 storage and download that module directly. Which, if you wanted to mirror the Fez ecosystem, is exactly how you would do it. You would just do it for all modules. All right. And I think my talk is pretty short. I'm not sure what time it is. 10 minutes, yeah. Okay, so that's all of my info. I'm Tony O, or Tony Odell. You can chat with me in IRC. Feel free to PM me. If you'd like to donate to Fez's ecosystem, or the cause or whatever, then you can Patreon or GitHub sponsor or whatever. But that's all I have prepared slide wise and to chat about. So we'll go to questions. I'll stop sharing my screen so I can see stuff. Cool. Looks like there's no questions. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, sorry, quick question. I think there's time, right?
Oh, plenty of time.
It seems like you said you're just storing stuff in S3. It looks like there's sort of a potential, DOS that could happen here. Obviously, if somebody decides to upload a module with a couple dozen copies of Wikipedia, I mean, S3 is pretty cheap, but still, obviously there is a DOS opportunity, vulnerability here. Have you built any protections in? And then you're talking, mentioning, authentication. You can't upload. So there's sort of two separate but related questions. The first one is about the S3 business, and then the next one, the related one, about authentication. So if I try to upload a module with somebody else's metadata, what exactly happens? How is that prevented? Is that allowed, but then Zeph won't show it to me, or will highlight it, or am I not allowed to do that? Yeah, that's sort of an end of that question, I think.
Good questions. On the first one, there are file size limits to what you can upload, so you can't just upload a terabyte file or anything. And yeah, there's some protection built into the endpoints. If you try to hammer that endpoint to upload your distribution, a million times a second, it's rate limited. You can only do it once every few seconds. So there's protections built into it that way. On the second question, which was what protections does Fez provide on the metadata? Yeah, that's a really good question. So Fez will take a look at the meta JSON file in whatever you uploaded, if it exists. And it'll do a lot of verification. So there's a key that you use when you upload, and that key has to match a key that was generated for your user when you requested the upload link. right? So if the key doesn't match what it sees in the meta file for your auth username, then Fez rejects it. It doesn't store it. It just basically deletes the gzip file that you uploaded. It doesn't store it anywhere, and then it sends you an email telling you that the auth didn't match. So if my username is Tonio and I upload something as code sections, I'll get an email after it looks at the meta JSON file that says, hey, your auth didn't match. Please try your upload again. And the same is true of other parts of the meta file. If you upload a meta file with an asterisk or a star as the version or API or something like that, Fez will tell you that it doesn't allow that. The reason it doesn't allow that is that it will supersede version matching in some instances and can cause problems down the line. So Fez actually does more strict checking than the other systems, which is to say it does some at all. But it does try to verify that your username matches what's in your meta file. Does that answer your question? Or can I elaborate on something specific that you'd like to know more about? Cool. Yes, Daniel.
So a somewhat related question. I know that one of the problems a lot of other language package managers have had has been with malicious packages. What is the story with Fez for that? If a package is discovered to be mining Bitcoin or harvesting credit card numbers, is there a way to programmatically react and delist a package?
As an end user, not really. I have tools in place that I can use if a package is discovered to be malicious, that I can just remove it from the index and remove that package itself from Fez.
And then mirrors would just pick up that delisting?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Dan?
Yeah, that actually, Daniel's question, good point. It reminds me of, there's been a whole slew of like papers recently about package, ecosystem, problems of various kinds. Most recently in Python, there was some paper that wasn't actually very great, but nevertheless, this is obviously a big topic. And so what about, for instance, sort of, not, so you mentioned, disallowing the star because, that sort of can top, win any version checking. But what about like, the near miss problem? If somebody misspells, a common package, a transposition, an off by one error, or you're reversing, the name is, verb noun, and somebody uploads a package that's noun verb and it's actually, malicious. Again, is there any like automated security checking? Is it really just sort of, at this point, it's still, the ecosystem is still so new that it's dependent on people noticing and alerting you. And this is a massively hard problem, so I wouldn't expect to have that there's that every possible vulnerability has been addressed ahead of time, but there has been a lot of research into the kinds of problems that well-established ecosystems experience, and it might be good to look at some of those that work and see what can be done preemptively.
Yeah, there's not a lot going on the Fez backend to make sure that off by one package names are not made available immediately, and there's no manual vetting process that is in place at the moment. But yeah, now's the time. I could always use help figuring that stuff out. But I haven't seen that problem come up in the Raku module system yet. There is an idea that I've been working on that would do a little bit, maybe not on the misspelled name, but if somebody's uploading modules that mine Bitcoin or do something like that. And that project is basically doing regression and quality testing of modules. And I think what you're talking about comes into play a lot with what is the quality of a module? How well is it tested? Does it work on many operating systems? Does it not work on specific ones? And making that quality score available for modules is probably my next step in developing Fez.
I assume this is sort of similar to CPAN testers.
Yes, it's fairly similar to CPAN testers. The idea that I have is I'm only superficially familiar with CPAN testers. If I remember correctly, CPAN testers gets data from the outside world. The way that I want to do the quality testing is on VMs and developing that quality score internally, and then allowing external factors to also come into play. So data from external people.
I guess sort of, I hadn't really thought about it, but you just mentioned, along with the quality, what about, using something like, do you have any interest or any plans to integrate with something like Blinn, which, sort of the automated, the test tool that automatically tries to install all of the modules, and if something fails, it bisects Rakudo to see where the fail happened. That seems like maybe there's some interesting integration that could happen, with the ecosystem where somebody uploads a module, and well, obviously hopefully it works right away, but maybe you test it with old versions of Rakudo on upload. Does it install if you're using Rakudo's back through X number of releases, and that might be part of the quality score.
Yeah, so the plan there is to cycle through VMs running OS X, Windows, various flavors of Unix and Linux, and doing something very similar to what Blinn does to generate that quality score.
Cool.
I need more time in a day. Does that answer your questions?
Yeah, good.
Okay. My old friend Stefan.
Hey, totally great to see
How's it
you
going?
again. A follow-up question on the authentication of users or authors, really. So Fez does the checking with the Meta6 JSON files, which is what it does different from the community or the CPAN ecosystems. But what do we really gain as long as those ecosystems are still there? I can maliciously upload a distribution under a different author's name, and Ceph will happily install it.
Yeah, that's true. I think the direction that I personally would like to see it go and would like to take Zeph in is to phase out P6C, which is obviously a big undertaking. A lot of stuff relies on modules that are only available in P6C. JJ Atria's talk, he mentioned the complexity of deduplicating modules between ecosystems, or having modules that the author has moved on to something else, to woodworking or whatever, and no longer maintains. PRs aren't being accepted, but something relies upon it. So it's really hard to get rid of P6C. It's really hard to get rid of CPAN. There is a strong relationship between Raku and Perl, as much as some people would like that not to be. but I think I would like to see the direction move away from P60 and move away from CPAN and start to use things where you have some reasonable assurance that the author you're getting the module from is the author that actually uploaded it. So there's no immediate benefit to Fez's strict auth checking, but I think down the line there is some security in it.
Would there be some middle ground by kind of intentionally confusing the content storage services like CPAN with authentication? For example, if I state in my Meta6 JSON that the author is CPAN 9, which is my handle on CPAN, and Ceph would check that, then we would have authentication. Because Ceph knows where it got the dist from, and it can check that it actually downloaded it from my user account on CPAN.
Yeah, that makes it really difficult to mirror CPAN or use a private PAN, because now you're, if you're using CPAN as the URL and that's how you're figuring out you're getting it from CPAN, then it removes the simplicity of CPAN itself, which is just a big file repository. So yeah, you could do stricter auth checking against CPAN, or you could also make the indexer that trolls CPAN, make it only index files where the user who uploaded it matches the meta username. But again, you're still relying on a lot of back-end processes that have to happen before it actually works for Zeph. And you can't guarantee that the indexer wasn't compromised either in that case. How about Raku community modules? I don't know. I don't really have an answer for that one. One option is to create a Raku community module account where many people have access to it. Yeah, there are a number of options there. It could be automatically indexed as a special process. In Fez, yeah, we should probably chat about that offline, Liz. Come up with an answer to how that'll work. Or somebody can just own the Raku community modules and they can be responsible for uploading them. But that doesn't seem like a great option either. I think I'm over time. We did it. Thanks for all the questions. Introduce group concept in Fezza. Yeah, that's a good step also. I need to prioritize some stuff. The group concepts would be pretty great. Oh yeah, okay. I'm getting kicked off. Thanks everybody.